Hello students, good evening. Good evening everyone. So my name is Rohit and this is my second class. Okay, so today we are going to start with the introduction. I'm not going to teach any chapter. No, today we are not going to discuss anything in the constitution, but today we are going to discuss about the introduction. I mean, what all things we are going to discuss in Indian polity. So today we will discuss about what all chapters you need to learn in Indian polity. So let us start. So welcome everyone. So let us start with the introduction. How we are going to approach. So when we say Indian polity, we basically mean we are studying Indian constitution. As discussed earlier, what is the political structure of this country? If we want to know the political structure of this country, then we have to see the Indian constitution, because in Indian constitution, you will understand that what is the political system of this country. And let me tell you, the political system in this country is the parliamentary system. We have adopted this system from Britain, but we will discuss this in a separate chapter called parliamentary system. But today we are going to discuss about the introduction, that what all things we are going to study in this subject, Indian polity. So as you all know, we are going to study the Indian constitution. And when we say Indian constitution, we usually begin with this chapter. So the first chapter that we will be dealing in Indian polity is the making of the constitution. So this will be the first chapter, making of the constitution. So what we are going to study in this chapter? In this chapter, we will study two things. First is, who made Indian constitution? Whenever I ask this question from students, that who was responsible for framing the Indian constitution, they straight away say that it was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. But the fact is that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar alone was not responsible for making the constitution. See, we call Ambedkar, or we address Ambedkar as the father of Indian constitution. Similarly, we address Mahatma Gandhi as the father of nation, but this doesn't mean that Gandhi alone was responsible for the independence. Similarly, Ambedkar alone was not responsible for making the constitution. There were many more. The Indian constitution was made by Constituent Assembly, in which there were 299 members, and out of those 299 members, one such was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So in this chapter, we will study that how the Constituent Assembly was created and how Constituent Assembly performed its function. So in this chapter, we will study two separate things. The first is how Constituent Assembly was created, and then how Constituent Assembly framed the constitution. All these events will be discussed in this chapter, making of the constitution. So we will be starting Indian polity with this chapter. I know there are many teachers who usually start Indian polity with historical background, where we study the different laws made by the Britishers. We all know that Britishers ruled India for around 250 years. So in these 250 years, they made several laws. The first law was Regulating Act of 1773. And after that, they made several acts: Indian Council Act, Charter Act, Government of India Act. So I usually begin with making of the constitution. So there is no logic that we have to start with historical background, because much of the historical background is discussed in the history. So I usually begin with making of the constitution. And after making of the constitution, we start with the features of the constitution. So Indian constitution was the longest written constitution. So this constitution contains many features. So in the next chapter, we will discuss about the features of the constitution. Features of the constitution. So when we will study the features of the constitution, in this chapter, you will see that the Indian constitution is the longest constitution in this world. Then we will see that the political system is parliamentary system. We are a federal system with unitary bias. We have fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy, emergency provision. So all these features will be discussed in this chapter, features of the constitution. But let me tell you, Fundamental rights is a feature of the Indian Constitution, but we are not going to discuss fundamental right under this chapter. Fundamental right will be discussed separately, but in this we will just discuss about that yes, fundamental right is a feature of the Constitution. Similarly, emergency provision is a feature of the Constitution. So there are somewhere around 16 to 17 features of the Indian Constitution. So we will briefly discuss about each and every feature. So after features of the Constitution, we will begin with the preamble. Now, let me tell you the importance of preamble. Remember, preamble is the introduction of the Constitution. So it is possible for me that I can start Indian polity with preamble. We can later on discuss. However, I'm not going to discuss making of the Constitution at the end. No, I'll be starting Indian polity with making of the Constitution, but it is possible for me to start the Indian polity from preamble, because preamble is an introduction to the Constitution. So it is not necessary that I have to start Indian polity from the making of the Constitution or from historical background, because there is no proper link between these two chapters. Yes, there is only one link, and that link is that on 13th December 1946, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru introduced objective resolution, which was later modified into preamble. So we can argue that preamble is a modified version of objective resolution. But in this class we are going to move in this manner: making of the Constitution, features of the Constitution, then preamble. Okay, so when it comes to preamble, again in our examination two kinds of question come. The first is the area related to preamble. The first video on this channel, in that video I have discussed about preamble. So what all things I am going to teach in this chapter preamble, that is discussed in that video, the first video. Okay, so what all we are going to discuss in preamble, I have discussed it earlier in the separate video. So after the completion of preamble, we'll be starting with the part 1 of the Constitution. So the part 1 of the Constitution is Union and its territories. So after preamble, we can start with this chapter, Union and its territories. So this is the part 1 of the Constitution, and in this part there are total 4 articles: Article 1, 2, 3 and 4. But this chapter is really important, especially Article number 1 and Article number 3. See, not all articles are important. In Indian Constitution there are 395. Sorry, when the Constitution was made on 26 November 1949, Indian Constitution was completed. Okay, so when the task of making the Constitution was over, there were total 395 articles, but not all articles are important for us. Many articles are of no use today. So only few articles are important, and see, out of 395 articles, only few articles are important. Around 100 to 150 articles are important. So in Indian Constitution, you do not have to remember each and every article. See, you are not preparing for Judiciary, you are not preparing for law, you are simply preparing for a government examination, and in that examination there is a pattern. They usually ask the most important articles, and these articles have a pattern. So for example, fundamental right is really important. Many articles from that chapter are asked in the examination. So we will be discussing only the important articles. So this chapter contains 4 articles, Article 1, 2, 3 and 4, and out of these articles, 2 articles are super important, Article 1 and Article 3. So we will later on discuss that what is Article 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay, but remember one more thing. After Union Territory, we'll be studying a separate chapter which is not mentioned in the Constitution, but this chapter is based upon the part 1 of the Constitution. So this chapter is not mentioned in the Constitution, but it is a part of our syllabus. So this chapter is States Reorganization. So there are no articles related to states reorganization, but this chapter is again very important for us. So in this chapter we will understand that how states were created, especially on the basis of language, which was the first state created on the basis of language, and how the present political structure, the present political map came into being. All these things will be discussed in this chapter, States Reorganization. Okay, as you all know that at present, what we are seeing in our country is a dispute, especially related to language. The South Indian states are opposing the imposition of Hindi. The government is trying to impose three language formula, but there is opposition from the South Indian states. So they believe that imposing Hindi is not good for them. So language is again a major issue in our polity. So again we will be discussing briefly about what this language issue was and how the first language, how the first state on the basis of language was created, which was Andhra. Okay, not Andhra Pradesh, it was Andhra state, created in 1953. So after this chapter we will be dealing with states reorganization, and after states reorganization we will be starting with part 2 of the constitution, and part 2 of the constitution is citizenship. So not many questions are asked from this chapter, but let me tell you, in 2019 government introduced Citizenship Amendment Act. So this particular act is really very important, and there was a lot of dispute in various parts of the country related to citizenship amendment, which was amended in 2019. So that's why citizenship chapter has become important, especially when the amendment act was, when the Citizenship Act of 1955 was amended. See, in 1955 the parliament made Citizenship Act. So this act deals with how you can acquire Indian citizenship and how you can renounce Indian citizenship. So there are various ways through which we can acquire Indian citizenship and we can lose Indian citizenship, and all these things are mentioned in Citizenship Act of 1955. Now this act was made in 1955 and it has been amended in 1986, in 1992, then in 2003, then 2005, 2015, and recently in 2019. So when the Citizenship Act was amended in 2019, it was called as Citizenship Amendment Act 2019, and you must have seen it written somewhere CAA. Here CAA means Citizenship Amendment Act, which was amended in 2019. Because of this, there was furore in various parts of the country. So after citizenship, we'll be dealing with the next part of the Indian Constitution, which is fundamental rights. And let me tell you, fundamental rights is seriously very important for examination. It doesn't matter whether you are preparing for UPSC, state PSC, or for SSC, or for any other government examination where polity is in the syllabus. Fundamental right is very, very important for you. So in this chapter there are many articles starting from article 12 to article 35. You need to remember each and every article. You cannot say no that there are so many articles, I'm not going to learn all these articles. You cannot avoid this. You have to study all the articles in the fundamental right chapter, especially article number 14, article 15, article 16, article 17, then article 19, article 21, article 32. These all articles are really very important. So when we'll be starting with fundamental right, our focus will be on dealing with each and every fundamental right, that too in detail. We'll be discussing articles and its clause and subclause. In fundamental rights, you will see that yes, there is reservation in educational institution for SC, ST, OBC, and recently EWS, that is economically weaker section of society. It means those people who earn less than 8 lakh annually in general category are considered as economically weaker section. Economically weaker section basically means those who are considered poor in general category. And on what basis we decide whether you are poor or rich in general category? So there is a criteria that if your parents earn less than 8 lakh annually, then you can be considered, then you are considered as economically weaker section. So in fundamental right, we will discuss about that there is reservation in government job on the basis of caste. There is reservation in educational institution again on the basis of caste. So all these things will be discussed in this chapter. One more thing, you must have seen that recently many political parties are openly saying that yes, if we come to power, then we are going to deposit 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, 2,500 rupees in each and every, or those poor women who belong to weaker, those women who are generally poor. Now it is up to the government that how they will decide that whether a particular family is poor, whether this women belongs to poor section. So you must have seen that governments have been announcing that we are going to provide this thing to women. So why women? Why everyone is talking about women? Why they're not discussing about men? What about men? Do you think men need money? Do you think that men need free ride? In Delhi, there is free ride for women. Aam Aadmi Party government launched this scheme, free rides for women in public transport, especially bus. What about the men? Why can't government make such provision for men? Don't you think that we as a men need 1,000, 2,000 rupees or 2,500 rupees in a bank account? Why it's only about women? So the fact is that under Article 15, there are total 6 clauses, and the third clause says that the state is empowered to make a special provision for the advancement of women and children. So whenever a state makes anything which is specifically for women, then you can consider that as a special provision for women under Article 15 clause 3. So you must have seen that the government has introduced reservation in legislature, 1/3 seats to be reserved in the legislature for women, and the same provision exists in the local bodies. In panchayat and municipality, 1/3 seats are reserved for women. Why for women? Why not for men? Why there is no reservation for men? It is because giving reservation to women comes under a special provision under Article 15 clause 3. So you must have seen that in public transport there are seats reserved for women. Why women? It is again part of a special provision. 2,500 rupees will be deposited in the account of women of various section. Again, part of a special provision. Special colleges, a special institution only for girls, run by the state government. Again, a part of a special provision. And according to Supreme Court in PB Vijaya Kumar case, Supreme Court in PB Vijaya Kumar case clearly said that if tomorrow the government decide to give reservation to women in government jobs, then again that will be considered as a part of a special provision under Article 15 clause 3. So it is possible for the government to reserve 50% of government jobs for women. And you cannot say that this is discrimination on the basis of sex. No, that is part of a special provision. But we will discuss this separately when we will study fundamental rights. But I was here just to tell you that what all things we are going to deal in fundamental rights. Right now I was discussing about Article 15 and 16, where there is reservation in government job and education institution. But again, when we'll discuss Article 32, Article 32 is important. There is a writ called habeas corpus, and you must have seen Jai Bhim movie. In Jai Bhim movie, habeas corpus writ was mentioned. You must have seen that police illegally detained few Adivasi. So then the lawyer filed habeas corpus writ in the court, in the High Court. So we will understand by comparing this with the real life scenario, or in the movies what you usually see, that the writ of habeas corpus has been filed in the court. So what exactly habeas corpus means? And many times in examination the question has come from habeas corpus writ. It is the see, there are total 5 writs, and out of those 5 writs the most important writ is habeas corpus. It is issued when a person is detained illegally. Suppose police arrested you even without informing the magistrate. Ideally the constitution require that whenever police arrest someone, he must be produced before the nearest magistrate within 24 hours of arrest. But many times police know that no one in this country knows about the constitution, because we are hardly interested in understanding the constitution, our fundamental rights. We are more interested in understanding, and we want to debate on other things. We are not ready to learn what all fundamental rights we have in the constitution, but we are busy in dealing with other issues, which is not the ideal situation. So yes, when we will study fundamental rights, we will understand that what all things are necessary for you. So even if you are preparing for any government job, because of this subject, Indian polity, you will be able to know what all fundamental rights you have as a citizen. And let me tell you that there is something unique about Indian Constitution. Not unique, but yes, this is something special about Indian Constitution, that in our country, fundamental rights are available not only to citizens of this country, but even to foreigners. There are many fundamental rights which are available to even a foreigner, because you are a human. Now, this is partly based on human rights. Because you are a human, that is why you are entitled to have these rights. So you cannot be treated as an animal in our country. You are a human, and by virtue of being a human, you are supposed to have these rights. So we can argue that there is a principle of fundamental rights, there is a concept of human rights in our constitution. We have imbibed human rights in our constitution, and we see when we say that fundamental rights are available even to foreigners. So we will discuss this separately in this chapter, fundamental right, which is going to consume a lot of time, but yes, it will be worth it, because this chapter this chapter is really very important for your examination. Okay, so after fundamental rights, we will be starting with the next part, and that is DPSP. You must have seen written DPSP somewhere, but the full form of DPSP is Directive Principles of State Policy. So let me tell you, again, this is a very interesting chapter. It is interesting for me. I don't know about you, whether you will find this chapter interesting or not, but believe me, for me, fundamental right is super interesting, and even this chapter, DPSP, is interesting. You know why this chapter is interesting? Let me tell you. When we elect a government, we elect the government so that government does something good for us. For example, it is the task of the government, it is the duty of the government to provide employment. So suppose there is unemployment in our country, and which we are witnessing at present. So it is the duty of the government to address this issue. Suppose there is a lot of poverty in our country. Don't you think this is the task of the government? This is the duty of the government to address this issue. So there are many issues which are plaguing our society, but still we are discussing something else, but let us not discuss that. But I'm just reminding that this particular chapter is seriously important. You must have seen that alcohol is banned in Gujarat as well as in Bihar. However, it is available illegally, but it has been banned by the state government. So you must ask this question, that why the state of Gujarat imposed a ban on alcohol? Why the state of Bihar imposed a ban on the sale of alcohol? Why? It is because in this chapter, DPSP, it is clearly mentioned that it is the duty of the state that the citizens of this country should live a healthy life. You should have good nutrition. So alcohol, these all things are injurious to your health. So it is the duty of the state to prohibit the consumption of alcohol. So whenever you see that a state is imposing ban on hazardous substances or intoxicating substances, or those substances which are injurious to your health. For example, let me tell you about tobacco. You all must have seen that people are chewing tobacco. You all must have found that it is something disgusting when people chew tobacco and they spit anywhere, wherever they want to. Whenever they are traveling to any beautiful place, they have the habit of chewing tobacco and spit wherever they find clean place. So because of this, there is an image, or there is a stereotype about Indians, that Indians are dirty because of these habits. So if tomorrow the government impose a ban on the sale of tobacco, then you cannot say, or you cannot argue that it is my fundamental right to chew tobacco. No, this is not a fundamental right to chew tobacco, and it is the duty of the state government, it is the duty of the government to ensure that the people living in this country live a healthy life. So all these substances, be it alcohol, be it tobacco, these all are injurious to your health. So while studying DPSP, we will be discussing with all these issues. In this chapter, it is clearly mentioned that equal pay for equal work to men and women, And you must have seen that government is really working hard to ensure that for the same work, for the same amount of work, both men and women are paid equally. Ideally, this doesn't happen, but yes, this should happen, that men and women should be paid equally when it comes to the equal amount of work they are doing. Okay, so we will discuss all these things in this chapter, Directive Principles of State Policy. So after this chapter, we will be studying fundamental duties, which was added during the rule of Indira Gandhi. Fundamental duties. Now many people think that inserting fundamental duties into the constitution was a controversial step, but again, as a citizen, see, we as a citizen enjoy rights. Our constitution guarantees certain fundamental right to us. So as a citizen, if we have rights, then as a citizen we must have certain duties toward the country and toward our people. So as a citizen, I am expected to perform certain duties. So as a citizen, I must respect my national flag. As a citizen, I must respect national anthem, national song. I have no authority as a citizen to insult my national anthem, my national song, or my Constitution of India. Similarly, as a citizen, I am supposed to preserve the environment. It is my duty that I should not cut forest. These are protected forest, not all, but yes, there are many forest falls in this category. As a citizen, it is my duty that I should have scientific temper. You know what it means when we say scientific temper, to have scientific temper. Scientific temper means you should not believe in anything which is said. Let me tell you that you must have seen, you must have heard about this Andhvishwas. So right now you must have seen that there are many people who blindly believe on anything they see, and they do not have any logic that why they are doing that, but they are still doing that. And because of this, an entire industry is there, which is again trying to deviate you from the trying to deviate you from the path. So later on we will discuss that what I was trying to say. So let us not discuss that, but yes, as a citizen, I must have certain duties toward my country. Yes, and this we have borrowed from USSR. This particular chapter was borrowed from USSR, Russia. So we will discuss all this in this chapter, fundamental duties, that as a citizen what all duties you have towards your country, and how this chapter was added in the constitution. So all these things will be discussed. And after fundamental duties, we are not going to follow the sequence. Let me tell you that right now what we are doing. First we discussed the part 1 of the constitution, part 2 of the constitution, part 3rd, part 4th, and this comes under part 4A of the constitution because it was added in 1976 after the constitution was made. So after this we are not going to follow the sequence. What we are going to do is we are trying to we will study few separate chapters which are not a part of the constitution, but yes, they are somehow based on the constitution. So for example, we will be discussing parliamentary system. As we all know that in our country we have parliamentary form of government. See, there are two famous model of government. The first is parliamentary government and the second is presidential government. In India we have parliamentary government, and in USA we have presidential system. So in parliamentary system, what all features are there, we are going to discuss that. So we have parliamentary system, but there is no specific article which says that yes, in India we have parliamentary system, though there are many articles which say that this feature belongs to parliamentary system, but there is no single article which is going to say that yes, this is the parliamentary system. No, there is no such article. So after parliamentary system, we will be going to discuss another chapter similar to this, and that will be the federal system, or I should say federal government. So in parliamentary system, we will be discussing about that what all features are there in a parliamentary form of government, and after this we will be discussing about what all features are there in a federal system or federal government. And in this chapter, federal government, we will also be discussing about the unitary system, because as we all know, or I don't know whether you are aware of this fact or not, but in India we have federal system, but we have a biasness towards unitary system. So what we say that we have federal system with unitary bias. It means that yes, the powers are divided between the center and the states, but more powers are given to the center. This particular system has been adopted from the Canadian Constitution. Giving more powers to the center is a feature of Canadian Constitution. And as you all know that one thing I forgot to mention, that right now I realized that while studying the features of the Constitution, we will be also discussing about the sources of the Constitution. See, while discussing about fundamental duties, I said that we borrowed fundamental duties from USSR. So it means that the fundamental duties have been borrowed from USSR. This shows that yes, the source is USSR. So similarly, when we will be studying the federal system, so in federal system I will be telling you that we have a federal system with unitary bias. This particular thing was borrowed from Canadian Constitution. So there are many things in our Constitution which has been borrowed from the Constitution of other countries. So all these things will be discussed separately in sources of the Constitution. So after parliamentary system, we will be studying federal government along with unitary system, and after federal system, we will be discussing another chapter which is again not a part of the Constitution, but it is somehow related to Constitution, and that chapter is, seriously, this chapter is very important, and this chapter is basic structure of the Constitution. Basic structure is the judicial innovation. Basic structure can be considered as an example of extreme judicial activism. Now, what is judicial activism? All these things will be discussed, but not today. Some other day, we will be discussing about judicial activism. But let me tell you, basic structure is really important, because during emergency, when emergency was imposed in 1975, the government was trying to amend the Constitution according to its own wish, according to its will. The government was trying to introduce changes which suits the ruling government. But in Keswanand Bharti case, which was on 24th April 1973. So on 24th April 1973, Supreme Court delivered its judgment in Keswanand Bharti case, and in Keswanand Bharti case, Supreme Court introduced this doctrine of basic structure. And what is basic structure? See, it is possible for the government to amend the Constitution, but because of this doctrine, that is basic structure, the government has, there is no unlimited power with the government to amend the Constitution. No, after the introduction of basic structure, it is not possible for the government to amend the entire Constitution. No, because basic structure means those provisions of the Indian Constitution which cannot be amended even under Article 368. So there are many features which falls under the basic structure of the Constitution, but yes, basic structure is not mentioned in the Constitution. So suppose if this statement comes in the examination, and one statement is basic structure is defined in the Constitution, let me tell you, there is no such thing called basic structure in our Constitution. There is no mention of basic structure in our Constitution. So if there is a statement that basic structure is defined in the Constitution, this statement is false. This is the innovation of Supreme Court in Keswanand Bharti case, delivered on 24th April 1973. So basic structure is really important. We will be discussing several cases. For example, we will be starting with Shankari Prasad case, then Golaknath case, and after that 24th Amendment, then Keswanand Bharti case, after that Raj Narayan case, then Minerva Mills case. So many cases will be discussed in this chapter, basic structure. So for me, basic structure is really very interesting. I don't know about you, but yes, it is interesting for me, and I will ensure that you find this chapter interesting. Now it is up to me whether I make this interesting or not. So I will try my I will try my best to ensure that this chapter, in fact all the chapters, should appear interesting. Okay, so you must have certain interest. So whenever you are studying Indian polity, so it is up to me, or it is my duty to ensure that you find this subject interesting. Okay, usually students find Indian polity interesting, but let us see whether you find this chapter interesting. I will try hard, really hard, to ensure that yes, this subject is interesting, because in Indian polity we usually discuss about the constitution, and many people think that constitution is not that interesting. It is a boring kind of thing because a lot of articles are discussed in this. But because of these articles, you will understand that why we have this particular system, why all these things are happening in our country. So that is why it is my duty to ensure that you find this chapter interesting. Okay, so I know I'm a kind of boring person, but I will ensure that this you find this chapter interesting. Okay, after basic structure, we will be starting with the center state relation. So when we say we will be studying center state relations, remember, when we will study center state relation, we will divide this chapter into three parts: legislative relations, administrative relations, and financial relations. So if you have to study center state relation, if you have to understand it properly, then you have to divide this chapter into three parts. What are the legislative relations between center and states? What are the administrative relations between the center and states, and financial relations between the center and the states? So again, it's an important chapter, and for me all the chapters are important. See, if you will purchase any book from the market related to Indian polity, many students usually purchase M. Lakshmikant, and yes, M. Lakshmikant is seriously a fantastic book according to me, especially for those who are preparing for examination. But that book is especially for those who are preparing for civil service examination. So, and there are around 80 chapters in M. Lakshmikant, so we are not going to study all those 80 chapters. In our examination, not all 80 chapters are asked, because in UPSC there is again prelims, mains, so that's why those chapters become important. But when it comes to our examination, other than UPSC civil services, we do not have to study all those 80 chapters. There are some 30 to 35 chapters. I believe there are around 35 to 40 chapters which are important for our examination. So we are not going to study all the 80 chapters which are mentioned in M. Lakshmikant. Why I am saying this? Because many times students argue that, sir, in M. Lakshmikant this chapter is also mentioned, sir, that chapter is also mentioned. No, we are not going to study all the chapters which are mentioned in M. Lakshmikant. We are going to discuss only the important topics, and that are around 35 or 40 topics. So we will be focusing on those topics. Okay, so after center state relations, we will be studying emergency provisions. Emergency provisions. And now see, this particular chapter is interesting. And when I say interesting, it is actually interesting, because in this chapter we will understand that why a national emergency is imposed in our country. What happened during 1975, you all must know. I think you all are aware that in 1975 Indira Gandhi imposed national emergency under Article 352, and that was considered as one of the darkest phase of Indian democracy. So what happened during that time? Why Indira Gandhi was compelled to impose national emergency? You know, that emergency lasted for 21 months. So we call that those 21 months as the darkest phase of Indian democracy. So what exactly happened during emergency? Why? What were the circumstances which compelled her to impose national emergency? And she did this even without consulting her ministers. You know, ideally the Prime Minister is required to consult the Council of Ministers before taking any major decision. Ideally it is required as per the parliamentary system. So Indira Gandhi, without even consulting or even without informing her ministers, she straight away said to the President of India, Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed, then President, to impose national emergency. So it was really considered to be a controversial step. That why, even without consulting your minister, you straight away said that no, there is a need to impose national emergency in our country. So that was a controversial thing. So again, there is one more controversial thing about emergency, and that is Article 356, which deals with President's rule, also known as a state emergency or constitutional emergency. So president's rule has been imposed. See, national emergency has been imposed only for 3 times. First in 1962, then in 1971, and the third was in 1975. But president's rule has been imposed for more than 125 times, or approx 125 times. So, president's rule, which is under Article 356, has been misused many times. And we will discuss separately what all apprehensions were there in the Constituent Assembly pertaining to Article 356. Because Article 356 is considered as a potent weapon in the hands of central government. So whenever there is a different government at the center and different government in the states, then there are chances that the central government is going to use this Article 356 as a weapon to punish those states where they were not able to form the government. However, not always this is the case, but yes, many times Article 356 is seen as a tool in the hands of central government to harass those states where there is a different government other than the government at the center. So these all things will be discussed in this chapter, emergency provision. So this is really important for examination. There are 3 kinds of emergency: Article 352, Article 356 and Article 360. All these things will be discussed separately in this chapter, emergency provision. And now one more thing, I have seen at many places that whenever a teacher of Indian polity start with president, see, there are total 7 powers with the Indian president. We can club all the powers of the president in 7 parts. So there are total 7 powers with the president of India, and one such power is emergency provision. So what happens that many times teacher try to explain emergency provision under the heading emergency powers of the president, but emergency is a separate chapter. It demands special attention. So we cannot deal with emergency provision under the chapter president. Yes, it is correct that there are 7 powers with the Indian president, and one such power is emergency power of the president. But it will be injustice with this chapter if I start teaching emergency provision under the heading emergency powers of the president. No, I'm not going to do this injustice. This chapter demands separate attention. Special attention is required, and we'll be giving that. So it will not be discussed under the chapter president. This chapter will be discussed separately. So after emergency provision, then we are going to start with central government. We can also write union government, both are same. So in this chapter, union government, remember, union government is under part 5 of the constitution. So part 5 of the constitution deals with union government, and part 6 of the constitution deals with state government. So remember, the entire part 5th deals with union government, and when I say government, it means we are going to deal with all the 3 organs of government. See, in India we have democracy. So in India we have democratic government, and in a democratic government there are total 3 organs. The first is legislature, those who make laws. The second is executive, those who are there to execute those laws. And third is judiciary, to protect the constitution, laws, fundamental rights, and to solve the dispute between the other 2 organs. Suppose there is a conflict or dispute between the 2 organs of the government. Let me write it. See, in a democratic government there are total 3 organs. The first organ makes law. So the task of legislature is to make laws. The other organ, executive, the task of this organ is to execute laws. So they are going to make laws and they are going to execute laws. Now the third is judiciary. Now, what is the role of judiciary? See, the role of judiciary is first to protect our fundamental rights, to protect constitution, to ensure that all the things are happening as per the law. And suppose if there is a conflict between these 2 organs, then who is going to handle the dispute? If there is a dispute between these 2 organs, then yes, they are going to approach judiciary, because judiciary is there to ensure that all the things happen as per the constitution. So ideally, They are required to function according to the constitution. They are required to make law according to the provisions of constitution. They are not above the constitution. They are not above the constitution. So it is for the judiciary to ensure that it is for the judiciary to ensure that these two organs function according to the provisions of the constitution. So when I say that we will be discussing about the central government, so when we will start the central government, in central government we will be studying legislature, executive and judiciary. So when it comes to central government, we will be discussing all three organs. And now remember, when it comes to legislature, so the legislative organ of the central government is parliament. So you must have heard about parliament. We all are aware that yes, there is parliament called Sansad in Hindi, and the members of parliament are called as Sansad, MP. So when I say we are going to study parliament, you understand that yes, parliament means legislative organ of the central government. And when it comes to the executive, so president, when we will study president, remember president is a part of union executive. Vice president, again part of union executive. After vice president, prime minister, council of ministers and attorney general of India. Remember, attorney general is the highest law officer of our country. Okay, so these things these institutions or these offices are considered as the part of central executive or union executive. And when it comes to judiciary, we will be studying Supreme Court. So it is very simple to say, or it is very easy for us to say that we will be studying government. But when it comes to government, there is central government, there is a state government, there is local government, and when it comes to central government, there are total 3 organs. See, because in our country we have democracy. There is democracy in our country. So there is democracy in our country. So we have democratic government, and in a democratic government there are total 3 organs. So you must have read that there are 3 pillars of democracy. So similarly, a democratic government have 3 pillars or 3 organs: legislature, executive and judiciary. So, and when it comes to the state government, again we are going to study same organs: legislature, executive, judiciary, because be it central government or state government, both are example of democratic government. Central government is also an example of democratic government. State government is also an example of democratic government. So if central government has 3 organs, then state government also has 3 organs. So there are total 3 organs for the state government as well as for the central government. So the same thing we are going to study in the state government, which is under part 6 of the constitution. So part 6 of the constitution deals with state government. And again, applying the same logic, there are total 3 organs of state government. The first is legislature, the second is executive, and the third is judiciary. So if you will study central government, there are 3 organs. If you will study state government, then again there are 3 organs. Now the legislative organ of the central government is called as parliament, but when it comes to state, the legislative organ is known as simply as state legislature. See, we can call parliament as union legislature. The legislative organ of the center or union government can be called as parliament or union legislature. So likewise, the legislative organ of state government is called as state legislature. So parliament is union legislature, legislative organ of the union government. So this is the legislative organ of the state government, and there is no separate identity or name. We call union legislature as parliament, but there is no such name for state legislature. It is simply called as state legislature. And now when it comes to executive, yes, at the central level in the union executive there is president. So similarly we have governor. So the function which are performed by the president at the center, similar functions are performed by the governor at this level of state. So both are identical, and that's why while studying president, it is my duty to ensure that after completing the president, we will be starting with governor. So that's why it is very important that there is a link between the chapters. So while studying Supreme Court, we will be also studying High Court. So we will be studying Supreme Court and High Court together. After completing Parliament, we will be studying State Legislature because they are somehow identical. If Parliament is the legislature of Union Government, State Legislature is the legislature of State Government. So both are identical in their functioning, and that is why we will ensure that all those chapters which bear some resemblance, we will be studying them together. For example, if we will study PM, then we will also study CM at the same time. We will divide the notes in two parts. On the right hand side, on the left hand side, we will write Prime Minister, and on the right hand side, we will write CM. Then you will see that yes, there is a similarity between the Prime Minister and Chief Minister. What all functions are performed by the Prime Minister at the center, similar kind of functions are performed by the CM at the level of state. Same is the case with Supreme Court and High Court. So that's why there is important to establish a link between the central government and state government, because there is a clear link between the central and state government. Okay. So in the executive, governor, after governor, there is no vice governor. See, there is president, then there is vice president. But in case of a state, there is no vice governor. Yes, you must have heard lieutenant governor. But lieutenant governor is similar to governor. The difference is governor is in the state, whereas lieutenant governor is in the union territory. So in union territory, you will find lieutenant governor LG, Uprajyapal in Hindi. But for example, in Delhi, you will find LG, lieutenant governor. But in states, there is no such position, lieutenant governor, it is the governor. So in the state executive, there is governor, and after that, there is no vice governor. So after governor, you will be studying CM, Council of Ministers of State, and if there is Attorney General at the level of, at the central level, then there is Advocate General at the level of state. See, Attorney General is the highest law officer of our country. So Advocate General is the highest law officer of that particular state. So both are similar. Both perform similar function. Attorney General is the primary lawyer of the central government. Likewise, Advocate General is the primary lawyer of the state government. So both the institution are going to perform the same function to represent the government. Attorney is going to represent the central government, be it Supreme Court or High Court, and similarly Advocate General will be representing the state government. So Advocate General again falls under the state executive. Advocate General. Okay. Now when it comes to judiciary, see here the main is High Court. However, apart from High Court, there is lower judiciary, but that is not important from my examination because not many questions are framed from the lower judiciary, which deals with session court, district court. No. We'll be discussing few basic points about this, about the lower judiciary, especially about the district court, what all cases are handled by district court, what all cases are handled by the session court. Okay, we'll be discussing them, but that is not important from an examination perspective. Sometime question appears in the examination, but what is really important for our examination is Supreme Court and High Court. That is important for examination. Okay, so we are done with the central government and union government, and now you know that when I say that we are going to study the government, so when I say government, you should understand that there are three levels of government: union government, state government, and local government. However, these three organs of central government and of state government are not applicable in the case of local government. In the local government, you will not find these three organs: legislature, executive, judiciary. No, there are no three organs in local government. Local government is of two types. The first is rural local government and the second is urban local government. Rural local government is called as panchayat. The purpose of panchayat is to ensure that there is development in rural areas. So if someone asks that what is the task of panchayat, You simply say rural development. There is no need to give a long answer. The panchayat does this. No, the task of panchayat is simple, rural development. And in case of municipality, the task is simple, urban development. So we'll be discussing this in local government, but remember, there are no organs in case of local government. These three organs are discussed in which chapter? Central government and state government. We are not going to discuss judiciary, executive, legislature in case of panchayat and municipality. Okay. So after the central and state government, we'll be starting with local government. And remember, local government was added during the time of P.V. Narasimha Rao. You know, P.V. Narasimha Rao introduced panchayat and municipality in the constitution by the 73rd Amendment Act of 1992. Panchayat was inserted in the constitution under Part 9, and by the 74th Amendment Act of 1992, municipality was inserted in the constitution under Part 9A. So all these things will be discussed in this chapter. So I can simply say that yes, local government is of two types. First local government is in the rural areas, and the second local government is in the urban. So rural local government is called as panchayat. So what is panchayat? Panchayat is a type of local government which is present in rural areas. What is urban local government? Urban local government is known as municipality. So what is municipality? We can say municipality is a type of local government which is present in urban areas. So that is why you will never find panchayat in urban areas, and same is applicable to the rural areas. In rural areas, you won't find municipality, that is Nagar Nigam. Yes, I am Rohit sir. You must have seen, you must have saw me in beard, but right now that beard is gone. So if you are finding difficult to see whether I am that Rohit sir or not, yes, I am Rohit, but right now I am in clean shape. You cannot say that it's clean shape, but yes, it is a clean shape for me. Okay, so leave it. Okay, so this is local government. Okay, so these are the main chapter, and apart from this, we'll also discussing the constitutional bodies. And in constitutional bodies, we'll be studying. In constitutional bodies, we'll be studying Election Commission, CAG, UPSC, State PSC, and Finance Commission, then National Commission for SC, National Commission for ST, and National Commission for backward classes. So, okay, can we go English? So you are saying that, sir, I think the best way will be the teaching in English and Hindi. But sorry to say that this chapter is, this particular channel is dedicated to those students who find it difficult to understand in Hindi. So that's why, see, even I also have habit. I'm in habit to speak English and Hindi both. So whenever we study or whenever I teach, I usually use both English and Hindi. And I know for many students, it is actually comfortable when they learn something in English as well as in Hindi. But the problem with us is that, no, that's not a problem. It is the kind of audience that we are catering to. We are dealing with those students who usually do not find Hindi comfortable. So suppose from South India, there are many students from South India, they are not comfortable in Hindi. Similarly, those who are from Northeast, for them understanding Hindi is a task. So that's why we'll be studying the entire Indian polity in the language English. Okay, apologies for not using Hindi, and I know you all love Hindi. In fact, I also love Hindi, but the fact is that we'll be teaching the entire subject in English. Okay, and I don't think that I don't use heavy vocabulary. No, seriously, I'm not that good. But yes, I'll be using simple English. Okay, so the level will be simple. You will be able to understand it easily. So there is no such issue. Okay, so Okay, I think it's about 1 hour, and now it's time to say goodbye. I don't know how many of you were there from starting, but yes, I'll be teaching Indian Polity from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. Okay, so goodbye, everyone. Okay, so goodbye, everyone. So again, tomorrow we'll be having the class of Indian Polity at the same time, 8:30 to 9:30. So thank you, everyone.